And we are live. G'day everyone, Mike Jeffrey here, and you are listening to My Creative Journey, episode number 7. To all you new listeners out there, hello and thank you so much for taking the time to stop by here today. As I said, my name is Mike and I'm a freelance photographer from Sydney, Australia. Each week on the show I bring you guys along on the highs and lows of my own creative journey and share all the knowledge that I've gained along the road to building my own freelance business. In today's episode I'm going to be talking all about building strong habits and routines. One of the things that I find super tough about working for myself is sticking to a schedule and getting things done on time. So putting habits and routines in place is super crucial in succeeding with that. But before I do that, I want to take some time to talk about what has been going on for me this past week. And what a week it has been. It's officially been a week since I released the podcast out into the world, and I've had a lot of people reaching out, which is just amazing to be able to hear from so many people, and from so many people who I didn't expect would be listening to the podcast. I think I was overwhelmed by the fact that anyone would even sit down and spend the time to be able to listen to this podcast. But I've been just hearing from so many different people in a variety of different ways, and it's been amazing to hear the reception to the podcast and the things that people have been able to draw from it and take away from the podcast, and not really things that I thought were actually there, and the actual meaning behind episodes that I wasn't even thinking about. So being able to hear that from other people was just amazing. It's one of the things that I said when I started the podcast was that in the process of being able to put down these thoughts of mine and the journey that I've been going on, I think other people will be able to take things from that and learn and grow, and hopefully that they can see where I'm coming from and sort of use that and channel that in their own work and their own life and take that in a different direction. So I'm so glad that people have been able to do that, and they've been able to push forward and really take things from places that I didn't even think were there. As you guys may have realized, last week's episode was actually the longest one that I've recorded so far. It did actually drag out quite a lot, but I was really enjoying recording last week's episode. I was really looking forward to sitting down and recording that episode, and I sort of got into a bit of a swing and just sort of rambled on a bit of a tangent there towards the end. But I was glad that I did get that out, and it gave me more confidence to think that I'm able to sit down and speak for so long. If you guys saw on my Instagram stories, I posted through the week that in the process of editing the podcast, it came out to be that I spoke for about an hour and 15 minutes, and I cut that down to about 50 minutes in the final release. So I chopped out about 25 minutes of just me speaking, just rambling on about not much at all. But yeah, in that process, it gave me the awareness and just the belief, I think, that I can sit down here and record for such a long time. I think that was one of the very daunting things about the start, was that I knew I could have a conversation with myself, but I just didn't know how long I could sustain that for and how long information would be able to flow and things could still be interesting after about 45 minutes. I didn't think that I could sort of push that and keep it interesting for you guys. So that is something that I'm going to try and work on this week and try and come back and not just word vomit on you guys with everything that I've been thinking about this week, but try and more have it some sort of structure, and that you're not getting super bored towards the end of the episode where I'm not really saying much. So I'm going to try and keep this one a lot shorter and sharper. Now, full transparency is what this podcast is all about. And so in that spirit, I just wanted to share with you guys success, I guess, of the podcast over the past week, in that I've had 26 downloads of the podcast from the first 6 episodes that I've released so far, if you include the one I released yesterday. If you guys haven't checked that one out already, which I'm sure you have by the time you're listening to this episode, but if you haven't, do go back and check that one out, because it was a very interesting episode, I thought. But yeah, I'm very excited by the fact that I've had so many downloads of the podcast, and I'm sure that everyone isn't downloading the episode. I'm sure that people are able to listen to the episode at home or other things like that, so they're not having to download it. So I'm sure the number of people who have actually listened to the episode is much more than that, but to even think that many people would have listened to it, and each episode as well, that people are starting to come back and not just have listened to one episode and have turned off it, but have actually come back and listened to multiple episodes, I think is just amazing. It was never something that I thought that many people would be interested in at the start, I guess. I haven't really done a lot of work to push the podcast out there much further than just posting about it on Instagram and things like that. So I haven't really pushed the podcast any further, but to see that people are actually interested and people are messaging me about it and people are talking about it is great. And it's great to see that in those early stages that it is able to be something that people are starting to look forward to, and hopefully I can keep this consistency with being able to release episodes on the Monday, which seems to be, from the reception I've heard so far, a great thing. And earlier in the week is certainly working a lot better. In terms of my own work, over this past week, I've had a little bit of work, as you may have seen on my stories. I've been doing a bit of photography out and about, but I feel like the work itself is very few and far between. I said it on Instagram the other day. You guys may have seen it. I was saying that I just wish I could have more work. For me, it's not really a financial aspect to having to work. I just feel like I just really would like to be able to work. And that sort of comes along with enjoying the craft and enjoying the work that you're trying to put out there in the world, is that it wouldn't really matter for me if I was just going out and taking photos for free all the time, because to me, being able to keep up my skills and keep working in this area that I'm really enjoying is worth so much more to me than any financial aspect. I know I probably won't be saying that in another 6 months' time if I don't have any more money coming in, but for me at the moment, just working is I just feel like I get so much enjoyment and so much experience out of that I'm happy just working wherever. And so when the work's not coming in, I start to feel like I'm starting to go a bit stale, because it's very hard for me and working in a style of photography that I can't really emulate without other people, and that I need to have other people in order to be working with. So I've been trying to sort of extend myself and trying to put myself into different areas and put myself into different styles of photography to keep myself on an edge where I can keep sort of pushing myself into different areas, because being able to stay fresh and staying inspired and staying creative is so important in any creative field, and being able to work is one way that you can do that, and continuing to push and continuing to improve in your own craft and your own skills. I think making sure that you are sharp on those, so that when the moment does present itself, that you are ready to go. And so when I do get someone come to me, like I have had in the past, and say, are you able to come do this shoot, that I feel a lot more confident walking into that, because I've done so much other work in the time between the last one, just working for free and working for small little jobs here and there that I think will improve skills along the way. And so that's just one of the things that has been sort of going through my head over the past week, is that, yeah, I'd just love to be out there shooting more and taking more photos. But in that way, I'm trying to extend myself and use this time to work in other different areas, and trying to improve my skills in other things, so that when the time does come, I know that I am ready to go. In order to get new clients, I know a big part of that is obviously marketing and promotion. And I feel like that's a never-ending spiral for me, in that I just really don't know where to start, but I don't want to invest too much energy into that and too much time into sort of working that out. But then in the same token, I don't have a big financial pool to draw from and be able to put someone else into that area of my own business. So I'm trying to sort of play all avenues here and sort of do it all myself in a way, but that can then become that sort of spiral where you're spending too much time on promotion, but you're not actually seeing any result out of it, and you're not actually looking for any solutions. But then also, if you're spending too much time on marketing, when are you ever spending time actually practicing your skills? So it's hard, and I feel like I'm starting to sort of draw some sort of balance between those two, and I'm starting to feel a bit more comfortable. But it's that never-ending question of how do you improve if you're not actually working? So I just try to stay with it every day and stay very open to new opportunities, and trying to keep myself growing and keep pushing forward in a time that I know is very hard to work in a time where the work may not be sort of coming my way. But I know in the future that if you just hold out there and you just keep putting yourself out there on the line, eventually there's going to be more work coming my way. And so I'm very optimistic for that, and very hopeful that for the future. And I know that when the time comes, that I am going to be there, and I am going to be able to take opportunities like that with both hands. And so, yeah, as I said, being sharp and staying ready and staying on top of everything is super important to me. But hopefully in the next few weeks, I've got a few more things coming out in terms of that sort of working for free area, and some of the things that I'm trying to push into. As you know, guys, with me wanting to start in wedding photography, I'm trying to sort of push that out there a bit more. I've been trying to work in a lot more different areas and research a lot more into that. And so that is going to be something that's going to be coming to the forefront hopefully very soon, and sort of more advertising and promotion around that, and trying to get myself more work and more started in that area. But until then, it's just been a lot of work on the back end, and that's really what's been going on most for the past week. And that really leads us quite nicely into the topic of today's podcast, which is building habits. And so the idea for this really came about for me through the week when I've been trying to, as I said, working a lot on the back end in diversifying myself and trying to start in wedding photography. And so I've been trying to do a lot of work with my website and a lot of work updating my blog on my website. And I've been trying to do a lot of research into the whole wedding photography industry. And so using some of that research to then write blog posts for my website to try to not only upskill myself, but also inform other people and showing that I am aware of things that are going on in the wedding photography industry. Even being someone who is just starting out in that industry, I feel like I can still show that I am up to skills with that and I'm up to date with things that have been going on, and I know how to handle myself, and being able to put that out there and prove that is an important way. So having some context about that on my website is super important. And so researching a lot of those different things, it's been coming to me that I've been finding it very hard to stay consistent with updating my website and updating my blog on my website is something that I find quite challenging. I know I'm trying to write most of the stuff myself and trying to be present and trying to use my own language and just make sure that it is all trying to come from things that I would normally say. I don't want to try and write in a style that other people would write in. I'm trying to write the way I write, but in that process, I wouldn't say that I'm the best writer out there in the world. So that has been a challenge for me, and it's not always been something that I've enjoyed, but I know it's got to be something that I start to enjoy because I have to sort of do it long term. And so how that came up with the idea of building habits was that I was finding it very, very difficult to stick to that. And I was also finding it very difficult to stick to other things in my business and trying to schedule things in my business and trying to stick to a set schedule. But I thought I had to relate it back to other things that I had been doing in my life and things that I have been able to set successful habits around and things that I have been able to do with my life. And I thought, why can't I take those habits and put them into the business and take the skills that I've learnt from there and starting other things and trying to do things more often in my own life and take those into the business and be able to set up that schedule that I've been looking for and hopefully keep me more accountable and hopefully keep me more on track to continuing forward with these things that I know I have to do but aren't always the easiest things to do. We all know in starting a business there are things that you are going to have to do that you don't necessarily enjoy, and I think a majority of those things are admin tasks and certainly for me one of those tasks is updating my website and keeping myself fresh on those blog posts. So I'm trying to put routines in place to try and stick with those and try to make it more realistic in my own head that I am able to do this and show that it is something that I can do. And so today I just wanted to share 5 tips that I've used to try and create more consistent habits and try and keep up with my habits, especially in other aspects of my life, in things that I'm trying to do and things that I would like to do in having things and trying to keep towards my goals and things like that. So I thought I would share a few of those here today. Don't be fooled in any way into thinking that I'm the expert on all of these rules or have been so successful at being able to make my habits stick. As I've said before, this podcast is really for me is an audio journal. So in a way, this is really a reminder to myself in things that I know I need to do in my own business. And so I feel like if I just throw them out there into this episode, it'll sort of remind me a lot more to go back and actually put these things in place. But also I am hoping that I can help you guys along that same journey, as I think so many people would go through these things and so many people would be able to use these in their own work and in their own day-to-day life. So the first one is one that is widely referred to as the 21-day rule. And this is the principle that it takes about 21 days before you can actually get a habit to stick. So I personally try to incorporate this into monthly challenges. And I have done this a lot in the past. I've done this quite a bit over the past year, in that every month I try to set myself a new challenge and a new habit that I'm trying to make stick. So I will spend the 30 days in that month trying to be very consistent on my habits and trying to make sure that I can do them every single day of that month. And it doesn't have to be, I'm not trying to start every single habit on the 1st of January every year. I'm trying to start a new one every month. And so in that process of trying to start a new one every month, it sort of breaks down the things that I need to do. And so I'm not overloaded with these things that I need to do every single day from the start, but I'm I'm just trying to consistently build them up. And after the 30 days, I find that it's much easier to continue them once you have that habit in place. Once it's already stuck, it's so much harder to unwind back out of it than it is to just continue on. And so once it's in there, you can then move on to the next one. I feel like I've been able to do this very successfully in other parts of my life, and sort of just devoting that month to trying to apply the new habit. And it's not about, as I said, being perfect with each habit, and you don't obviously have to continue them after the 30 days if you find out that it's just isn't what you want to do. And I think that is a trap a lot of people fall into, is that thinking that just because they've made themselves stick to this habit that it can't be changed and can't be molded along the way into trying to fit with what they want to do. I think the most important thing is being able to turn up. Try not to set yourself too many rules around the things that have to be done, but just making sure that you turn up. And so for me, trying to start writing more blog posts, it could be, I'm not going to start a new blog post every day. That would just be unreasonable, and I'm not going to sit down and write a new blog post because I would never get to that. But I feel like every day I need to sit down and need to actually look at the blog post. I need to do some research on one day, or I need to actually start one the next day. But I obviously don't have to finish it that one day. I can continue on, but every day I've at least got to sit down and actually put pen to paper, or actually start writing something, because that is the way that it's going to continue on. And by the end of the month, more likely than not, I've actually stuck to it because I've just set myself such a short target. And I feel like in a way a month is just that perfect range where you can set yourself that goal of trying to get this habit to stick. And in most cases, after that month, they probably will. And it's not about after the month that you need to continue every day, but it will be a lot easier and you'll be more successful even continuing 3 days a week after that first month, because even 3 days a week is an improvement on how much you've been probably trying to do it before. So that, I think, with that first month and with that bit of a push off the start and using that momentum to continue on forward, I think is so important into trying to get you into the next phase. I was looking the other day in the fact that I've already gone over the whole month mark with this podcast, and that was something that I thought was going to be very challenging, but I think just turning up and continuing it for the first month, I think using that momentum then to push me forward into the next month and the month after that, even if the quality and the consistency of the episodes isn't as great, I think that still propels you forward and can still provide a lot more success in building that habit than if you would have just been complacent from the start and just been a bit haphazard with it and not have been as consistent from the start. It will be super hard to continue consistency after the first month if you're not consistent in the first month. So that is just the first one that I wanted to talk about. But then I think that leads well into the second point that I wanted to make, and that is start small and being able to make them sustainable. Because I think one of the big things that people often do wrong with starting to build habits and starting to build routines is making them unsustainable. I think that's one of the worst things that you can do in a habit. And whilst it's great to sort of push yourself and try to do things outside what you would normally do, I think if they're not sustainable, then you aren't ever going to be able to keep them up. It's so hard to start, let alone having something that is unachievable in the first 2 weeks, because you will turn yourself off it and you will end up heading in reverse in the fact that you probably won't ever go back to it for another month because you just thought how hard those 2 weeks were. So making yourself keep those goals and those habits sustainable is so important at the start. It's not always about being perfect. It's just about turning up. And most of the effort in actually starting a habit, I think, is actually turning up to actually start the thing that you've been so dreading that you don't want to do. And if just turning up is super hard, then maybe just turning up needs to be the goal. And maybe that needs to be where you start for the first 2 weeks, is just turning up. Don't actually have to do anything, but actually getting yourself up out of bed and making sure you sit down at your computer at 9 o'clock every morning. And maybe that has to be the goal for the first 2 weeks. Because if that is so much of a hurdle for you, then you're already on the right track in the first 2 weeks if you are managing to do that every single day. I use a good example with my training for my running, in that when I was first starting, I often set myself a goal of being able to run every day or being able to run maybe 5 days a week. But I never put a constraint on how far I had to run, because I knew that if I did that, and I knew if I said I had to run X amount of Ks every day, that would be a quick way to turn me off. One of the hardest things that I found when I was first starting was actually walking out the front door and starting to run. So any day that I could achieve that, I was very happy. I was happy that I was outside. It didn't matter if I'd only run 500 meters or run 5 kilometers. The fact that I was out the door and actually out there exercising was a great thing for me at the start. So had I have been super tough and said that I had to run 5Ks a day from the start, I probably would have ended up turning myself off it. And I probably would have got so exhausted in that first week, because anyone starting to exercise who hasn't even started before, they just know how draining it is. Like, I enjoy going for a run now, and I think I feel like I actually get more energy from that and being able to exercise. And I've said afternoons that I don't exercise, I often feel more lethargic. But I think when I first started, that was so hard, and exercising drained me so much. So having to do a certain amount every day would have just drained me too much, to the point that I probably would have ended up stopping. Being able to start small and being able to make your goals sustainable in the first couple of weeks especially is super important, and realizing what part of the habit has to take priority, because if you're prioritizing the wrong part, you can so quickly just lose everything that you're trying to do in that first 30 days, because that is so crucial in that first month. If you don't put the right things in place from the first month, it's only going to get harder from there. But if you do start well and you start to turn up consistently, then you can start to move up and start to bump the things up. If I was saying that I was starting to sit down at my computer every morning to start to work on my blog posts and start to do research and start to actually write some things, then after a couple of weeks, I could say, oh, okay, so now I'm going to try and put out probably 2 blog posts every week. I'm going to try and step it up from maybe 1 blog post in the start, or maybe just the first week I didn't do anything. Maybe I just did research, and that was all I had to do. I had to sit down and do that for a certain amount of time. I didn't actually have to write anything, because I knew that was going to be such a big hurdle. So I tried to ease into that. But there are other things that do go along with the process that I can also start in that first week to try and get myself worked up to it. There are so many things that you need to do in your day before you can actually sit down and start to do something at your computer. So if it is something just as simple as you would like to be out of bed earlier in the morning, then maybe that needs to be prioritized before you can actually start on whatever it is the other habit is. And that comes back to what I said in the beginning with the first rule, in that making those monthly challenges and trying to progress them and try to choose things earlier on that will actually help for the other challenges down the road. And so a few of the things that I've said before and things that I wanted to do with my exercise even in general was I wanted to start eating a lot healthier, and I wanted to be able to start waking up earlier in the morning. So I made myself monthly challenges, the first one of which was that I needed to be in bed by a certain time every night, because I knew that if I wasn't in bed, I would never get up early in the morning. I then used the fact that I was able to get up in the morning with being able to then exercise in the morning, because that was something that I wanted to do. And I knew if I wasn't up in the morning, it's hard to exercise if you're not awake. So I had to sort of put those things in place in the earlier months. And so it is going to take time. And these things, they don't happen overnight. That is one of the frustrating things about them, I guess. But it's the groundwork that you do early on, and those simple tasks that can often be so rewarding in the long run. And leading into point number 3, I think, is being able to keep yourself accountable, but also being able to keep yourself rewarded in a way, and being able to see growth and see change, I think, is so important, because we as human beings love to be rewarded for things that we are doing right, and to be able to be rewarded by ourselves is so important. It doesn't always have to be reward from other people. You don't always have to be actively showing the world, but if that is your thing, then by all means, if that's going to help you improve on sticking with your habits, or if it's going to help you have someone to keep you accountable, by all means, keep that there. But for me, I think one of the best ways that's worked is being able to just have something very physical that I can mark off every day. In the start, when I was trying to do those monthly challenges, I would keep a sort of calendar that I could mark off every day that I would do one of the things that I said I wanted to do that day. And so being able to see consistency and being able to see that I'd done so many was so important, because by the probably 10th, 11th day, when it starts to get really tough, you can have a look at that calendar and say, God, I've done 10 days in a row. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know if you could hear that, but that was our dog Maya scratching at the door. She could hear me talking in the room, and I made her stay out while I was recording the podcast, but she's just been scratching at the door for the past 5 minutes, so I thought I'd hop up and open the door. I don't think she'll make too much noise now that she's in here, so I'll continue on with what I was saying. Where was I? I was saying that by the 11th day, when things are starting to get tough, having that chart there or having that calendar to mark off the days that you have done is going to push you so much further, because you don't want to undo everything that you've done for the past 11 days, and you don't want to be able to let yourself down in a way, because you're the only one trying to keep yourself accountable here. And so if you turn up the next day and you haven't got a mark on that, you're going to be so disappointed with yourself, which in a way is a bad thing, but also can be used in a positive way into try and reinforce these ideas and these habits you're trying to build, and try and show yourself that it is able to be done. Because at the end of the month, if you get to the 30 days and you have successfully achieved it, it's going to be so rewarding for you to look back and say, I actually did that for the whole month, and now look where I am, and now look where I can go in the next month, because you proved to yourself that you can keep something up for 30 days and you can move on into something else for the next month. As I said, after that 30 days, if you don't want to be as strict, by all means, you don't need to be. As I said, I've done things for 30 days and then probably dropped them down to say only doing them, say, 5 days a week, or drop them down to even 4 days a week. When I know I have other things in my life that I really want to do, I don't need to be so strict on those. But I think a big part about being able to keep them long term is the fact that I knew I could do them from the start, and being able to get over that first hurdle of actually starting the task and starting and being able to build it up in that first 30 days to a point where I could be consistent over a longer period of time without having to think about it every single day, because it's already been built in as a habit. So that is one of the things that I think helped me so much in a lot of the things that I was trying to do, is being able to mark them off and being able to keep yourself accountable. As I said, if that's not a way that you actually like to reward yourself, or if you're not a very intrinsically driven person, I think being able to find someone else, or being able to find a friend to keep you accountable, is just as great. And just having someone else who is on the same journey as you, or trying to build the same habits as you, or even someone who's not, or someone who's trying to build their own habits, and you can be able to keep each other accountable. I think having that is so important, because if you're just in the dark and you're not keeping a track on where you are or where you're progressing, it's super hard to stay motivated without any sort of progression. It's a big reason why there are so many apps out there and so many things online that are trying to promote you to keep a track or keep a diary of things that you're trying to do, and keep statistics around those, because a big part of the human psyche is being able to get that reward from seeing that numerical data and having that in front of you and proving to yourself that, yeah, I've actually done it for 30 days. Without that, you might look back on the 30 days and not be able to remember. And it doesn't always mean that. It means if you get to the end of 30 days and you haven't been consistent with the 30 days, you can look back and say, oh, I only really missed 2 days. So overall, it's pretty good, and I feel at a good spot, and I understand why I missed both of those days. And I put something down here that, oh, I was unwell on that day, so it was just impossible for me to actually do that. Then you can sit down and really evaluate that and think, oh, you've actually really done a great job, and you can be able to reward yourself and use that as motivation, as I said, to continue on into the next month. And now the fourth tip I had was trying to blend your habits in with your routines. And this is something that I've tried to do with my own business and tried to incorporate and continue on, because I think it's something that a lot of people would do if they were working in a normal business. Because I often find myself very unmotivated to start working on a particular day, because I don't often have set things that I need to do on a certain day. So what I've started to do is to not complete tasks as they come in, but complete tasks on certain days of the week. So you guys will know that I record this podcast on a Tuesday, and I think recording it on Tuesday has been really good for me, because it gives me something that I know I have to do every Tuesday afternoon. And there's no changing my schedule of that. I just have to be here every Tuesday afternoon. And having given myself that task every Tuesday afternoon has been so instrumental in continuing the whole week through. And so I've tried to divide up other tasks that I'm trying to do and do them on other particular days of the week. I know I like to edit most of my photos on a Monday, because most of the time when I'm working, I'm taking my photos on the weekend. When I'm working with different clients, that's normally Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I like to come home on a Monday and edit. I don't like to do a lot of work on a Sunday, apart from actually going out and taking photos. So I save most of that editing for Monday. And then if there is any rollover onto the Tuesday morning as well, I then record the podcast Tuesday afternoon, and I don't like to edit it probably until the Thursday is normally an editing day for me, because I don't like to sit down again on Wednesday and have to hear the same thing over again that I just spoke about. So I try and give myself that day. And so in that time on the Wednesday, I've tried to sit down and allocate myself a bit of time for that sort of research that I was talking about with my website and with my blog and with my business going forward. And so being able to do some of that research on a Wednesday and sticking to that allows me to actually sit down at work on a Wednesday morning and exactly know what I need to do for the day, because it's the exact same every Wednesday. I'm not constantly having to think every Tuesday afternoon, what is there to do tomorrow morning? Or needing to actually sit down on Wednesday morning and think, for the first hour, what the hell do I need to do today? Because it's the same thing every week. And I think once then I start for the day, and if I do that in the morning, even if I don't have anything to do in the afternoon, I'll probably actually end up finding something to do because I've already started on that routine, and I've started with something that I'm very confident with and very consistent with, and trying to get more consistent with, I think only helps start the day off on the right foot. So this has been a really big thing for me, and trying to do things and blend them in with a routine. It's the same thing with my exercising, and same thing with me, as I said, wanting to try and exercise in the mornings because I wanted to start to build that into my routine. I was finding it super hard to be consistent exercising in the afternoon. There are so many things that can interrupt that in the afternoon, whether it be I have some work that needs to be done, I have something, I'm sort of working overtime, I start to feel unwell in the afternoon, I have someone else to catch up with. There are any number of things that I could be working on in the afternoon, right? But I know in the morning, in that first hour of the morning, there's not really much I ever have to do, right? So planning to actually exercise in that hour of the morning was so beneficial for me in trying to actually stick with the routine, because I knew that hour of the day, every single day, was allocated to exercising. And there was rarely anything else that could interrupt that. Obviously, I had to put the routine in place to be up early in the morning and be up at the same time every morning. So I've tried to be consistent with that as well. But exercising in the morning has been so beneficial. And in a way, all of these habits can be implemented through that routine schedule of being able to sit down at the same time each week and do the same tasks. I think after a while can start to feel a bit mundane when you're just answering emails on a Thursday. But I think it's so important to, first of all, group tasks together, because the more you can group a task, the less time you can take up spending on the task. If I was answering emails every morning and afternoon, I'd be spending so much time on my emails, opening them. I'd be getting distracted in other things. But if I know I just answer them on Tuesday morning and Thursday morning, and that's the only 2 days of the week, then I'm handing myself other time to be distracted on them. In the same way that I know if I edit the podcast on a Thursday, I know that it's there every Thursday, that I know as soon as I sit down, I know what I have to do. And I'm not wasting time in the morning thinking about the things that I need to do. So having that and blending that in with your routine and the type of habits that you were trying to build, I think is so important in being able to consistently keep it long term, because being able to have a habit is great. But if I was exercising some days in the morning, some days at lunchtime, and some days in the afternoon, it's super tough to continue that on, because trying to find time for it every day in, day out, it's just one more thing you need to think about. And so being able to take out as many different barriers as possible is so important in keeping that routine long term. And now the fifth and final point that I want to bring up today, and one that I think overarches everything and really everything I do in my own business, but especially in my habit building, is to know the reason why, and know why you want to build a habit. Because if you're not clear on the why, it's going to be so hard to implement the how. I say that because if you're not sure why you want to build a habit, if you're not clearly going towards a goal, then there will come a point within that first 30 days where you sit down and you actually question why you're actually trying to do this habit, because it will get hard. And in those moments when it does get hard, you have to reflect on the why. You have to have a strong why you're trying to do something in order to keep yourself accountable. Because if there's no why and you sit down when it starts to get hard and you think, why the hell am I here trying to do this? If you've got nothing to fall back on and you've got no reason why you're trying to do it and it makes no sense to you, then it's going to be so easy just to quit, because you have nothing in place that can try and tell you otherwise. If I turned up on the 1st of January and said, I want to start to go to the gym for the next 30 days. I want to start to make that part of my routine, so I'm going to go to the gym every day for 30 days. I get to about the 15th day of that, and I sit down and I think, why the hell am I at the gym? I'm not trying to get stronger. That's not something I really want to do. I'm not trying to lose weight. So why am I here? And you think, it's only because I've seen everyone's New Year's resolutions that everyone's starting to go to the gym, and I thought that was just something everyone wanted to do. Well, you very quickly will be turned off by that, and you'll very quickly lose that habit because you've got no reason why you're actually there. I think that's a very exaggerated example, but in some aspects, say if I was wanting to sit down and write these blog posts, if I'm trying to write them in an area that's not really wanting to work in, I can easily sit down and say, well, why am I trying to do this if it's not really helping me? And so if I don't say, well, I'm trying to write these blog posts because I know that will help improve my engagement on my website and hopefully try to book me more clients in a new area that I'm trying to move into. I know it's not going to help me in the first 6 months, and I know that no one will probably ever see them in the first 6 months, and that I'm only relatively new to this and it's going to take a long while to kick in, but I know in the long run it's for good. Then it's much easier to say, oh, after the first 3 weeks, if I start to get annoyed with it, it's easier to say, well, I just need to push through. I need to keep going because I know why I'm trying to do this. I know it's a long-term goal and a target that I'm trying to hit before the end of the year. So I have to stick this out. If I get into 3 weeks and say, and I don't have a why, it's very tough to continue on, and very tough with anything in any aspect of your life if you don't have a strong why and why you're trying to do something, in that trying to keep anything up is going to be very hard. And so this is why I say this one is an overarching thing in everything that I do, in that I make sure that I know why I'm starting a particular goal. I have definitely fallen into the trap in the past of starting things just because I thought, oh, that'd be interesting to start that and try and make that a habit of mine, because I didn't really know what else to do. And then I get 15 days in and just completely fall off the wagon of it because I realized that that was a bit of a stupid idea and I'm just spending my time on something that I don't need to be trying to do. But conversely to that, I have had habits that have been super tough, but I get to the 15-day mark and I know my why. And so that does help me to push on through the rest of the month and continue on further than that. I'm not going to say it's not going to be hard, because of course it's going to be hard, but it's going to be so much easier to continue and stick through with it if you know why you are even there in the first place. And so that has been my 5 tips for today, guys. I really hope you did gain something out of that. I know I certainly gained something out of that, just trying to spill some of my ideas into this microphone here. And I know being able to listen back to it on Thursday when I do edit this podcast, that I'm probably going to be able to take a lot away from this. So I hope you guys have as well. And I really do hope you guys use some of these things that I've talked about this week in your own life. As I said, I think these are so useful in any sort of habits. These don't have to be habits that you're trying to make in your business. These just can be things that you're trying to work towards in your own life. And I think the most important thing is just not to be so harsh on yourself and to make sure you start small, because starting is always the hardest. And so the only way that can be sustainable is if you start small and make sure you progress as you move along. As you start to find it easier, that's the point where you need to start to turn it up a little bit more. But don't turn yourself off it in the first 2 weeks, because it'll be so much harder to get back to later on. And I think that's where I'm going to leave today's episode, guys. I really appreciate you being here and actually listening to this episode number 7. I'm so glad that we've made it this far. And I know a lot of the things that I've talked about today have been able to keep me on track and being able to keep me accountable and keep me turning up here every Tuesday and recording new episodes of this podcast. It's not always easy to turn up here. I sometimes sit down and think, I could just move it on to the next day. But in the end, I'm glad that I have this time on a Tuesday afternoon to record the podcast, because it's been so beneficial for me having this same day every week and being able to know that it needs to be out by the next Monday to keep myself accountable in editing it on the Thursday is super important. So I'm so glad that there are other people on the other end of this actually listening to the podcast and actually gaining a few skills or a bit of wisdom out of it. I've heard from a few of you this week, and I'm so glad that I've been able to impart some of that knowledge onto you guys, and that it would be something that you would be willing to keep turning up for every Monday and keep listening to. That just blows my mind every week. But once again, I'm so glad that you guys are here. If you have enjoyed this episode, like I said last week, the best thing or the most helpful thing you guys could do is just share the podcast around. I would love it if you would leave a review as well, but as I said, that takes a long time for that review to actually kick in, and sort of requires other people actually searching for my podcast, which at the moment is so small that people probably aren't going to find. So the best thing that you could do in order to help me and help this podcast grow, I guess, is to be able to share it around with friends and family who you think might be interested, or you think might be interested in the journey that I'm going on, or who might be interested in starting their own creative journey. And so sharing this podcast would mean so much to me, and hopefully would be able to provide so much value for anyone else who would happen to listen to it. But once again, I just want to say thank you so much, guys, and I will speak to you all next Monday. Bye.